Hello, my name is Neo and welcome to another motorcycle feature. This is the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650, which we will be featuring for today's episode. So, let's go. So the Royal Enfield is a great bike for cruising around the city. I've read some comments from other owners with lots of more saddle time that the Interceptor reminds them of the bikes from the 70s, with modern tech like fuel injection and a smooth 6-speed gearbox. And may I include that it has a slipper clutch. Its design is true to the 1970s Interceptor Mark II because of its pure steel parts, minus the handlebar switches, which is understandable. Riding and owning this beautiful machine is meant to be easy. You hop on the saddle, start the bike, and go. It's air and oil cooled, yet even for a tropical country, it fairly does its job well. I've ridden this in EDSA, a notoriously busy road with the stop and go traffic. I must admit that my hand felt sore because of the clutch. I think it's because the owner replaced the clutch lever, which has a very angular edge. Also, I'd like to add in, I stalled the bike while I was in EDSA. You need to find neutral first before you can restart the bike. So I was talking about the clutch earlier, but I'd like to say that if you let go of the clutch without adding throttle, the bike will run smoothly. One of my favorite characteristics of this bike is even though it has a twin cylinder, it barely has any vibration for the handlebar, which makes it very comfortable to ride during city use or long ride use. One of my favorite things to do with this bike is actually rev matching the thing. The lovely spike of RPM while downshifting is pure joy. You just need to get used to the throttle at first. The owner replaced the seat with comfort seats. The rear suspension is now Allen's. If I recall correctly, upon trying the Continental GT, the OEM suspension is more stiff. So talking about the comfort seat, I think this is one of the first upgrades that you should get when you purchase a Royal Enfield Interceptor because it's a lot more stuff compared to the stock or the OEM seat. Okay, talking about aftermarket parts, there's already an abundance of parts that you can get for your Interceptor and as well as for Continental GT. And I think it's Royal Enfield's focus is you can customize the motorcycle to your liking to make it personal and make it your own. So the owner of this motorcycle wanted shinier engine covers. This is not stock, by the way. I think this is zinc plated or as he said is chrome buff. In a way, I don't know. But I think it's one of the most unique features that this bike specifically has because when I arrived at this place last week from Royal Enfield Bacoor's Tambike, they actually noticed this engine cover and then and asked me when I got down, is this from Jerry's bike? I was so puzzled because I actually brought a rather iconic bike because not everyone has this zinc plated engine covers. Okay, besides the engine cover, he also replaced the side stand because he thought the bike is leaning too much on the side stand. So the owner replaced the seat. This is a combination of leather and suede. So the owner wanted a leather grip, so here's a Trip Machine leather strip that you can add on to your handlebar. Same goes for the throttle. Besides the Allen shocks, the owner also replaced the front shocks with YSS for the front, which is now adjustable. So this small device that you see right here is actually a TPMS. So this is your monitor and then the sensor is actually inside the valve. And you can also check the temperature of the tires itself. The owner used a CF Moto bar end from the CLX. And one of its cool features is when you misplace it or misposition the handlebar, you can easily snap it back on. A comment for the foot peg, as you can see here, this part is elevated and when it rained, my boots were kind of slipping because of it. But this area is fine. I really like Royal Enfield's subtle way of placing their logos throughout the bike. The subtle logo on the back of the seat. Even their foot peg has their name on it, even for the passenger one. One more thing, it's a nice touch by Royal Enfield by adding a steel braided hose for the brakes, which is bi-brake. Alright, so this is what it looks like for a 5'6" sitting on this motorcycle. Actually, the feeling of sitting on this motorcycle feels like you're planted because of the way the tank is shaped. It's as if my thighs are already inside the motorcycle. I think that's the best way I can explain it. Unlike my bike, original bike, which is the Kawasaki Z900 RS, it actually feels like I'm already on top of the motorcycle. While this one, it feels like I'm inside the motorcycle, if that makes sense. So I want to share that this bike's characteristics, one of its standing out features is, well, it's an attention grabber. During bike meets that we have here in the Philippines, or as we call it as tam bikes, I think it gathers a lot of attention because it's a rather very shiny bike, and the overall aesthetics of this bike is really eye-catching, not only to the people with longer saddle time or saddle experience. I think it appeals well to the younger generation as well. For someone that's born in the 90s, I think I can still enjoy something similar to this, because actually my bike is also a classic one, and this has another rather more true to the vintage looks, but with modern technology that doesn't actually interfere with the overall look of the bike, because actually what they did is integrate it inside the engine. Speaking about it earlier was the fuel injection, the 6-speed gearbox, the ABS. I don't think it has traction control, but it has slipper clutch. Okay, let's talk about riding this bike. Disclaimer, this is only based on my personal riding experience. It can differ from one rider to another. Okay, so what I've noticed first is the engine is a 270-degree crank. I really enjoy its low thumping sound. It's one of the best examples when you talk about riding a slow bike fast. It doesn't really go that fast, but you know, the feeling of the high RPM, the low rumbling sounds, making the riding experience a lot better. Okay, talking about more of the engine, it's air and oil cooled, and actually it does a really good job even for a tropical country. I already had an impression when a bike is air and oil cooled, it really sucks when you use it on heavy traffic or prolonged usage. But this one, it really does a good job. We had a long ride yesterday, and I felt, even though I was running at highway speeds, I felt the engine was kind of getting heated a bit. And I think the reason is because I have a constant RPM during highway rides. So for the front tires, it has a very slim profile. Already feel that the bike is wiggling when there's an uneven surface. The front suspension is really great, and as well as the rear. The front suspension, however, is doing fine. I rather have dips when I'm braking. It's maybe because the owner replaced the front brakes, so it's a different feel. It's not like the stock ones that when you click it, it's rather soft. This one is the harder you press, the harder you brake. I was not able to compute the exact fuel consumption of this bike. I had a full tank yesterday and went to Carmona, going back to Makati. I just lost 1 bar. So it's really efficient, even though with my riding style. Okay, so the owner replaced the stock headlight bulb with a Nogsite LED, and it's a lot stronger now. I think that's also another useful aftermarket part that you can replace with the bike. All else, no more changes with the lighting. So one of the things that I had to adjust the most at first, being me used to modern bikes, is that this bike doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles, because this bike doesn't even have a gear indicator. It has to add in to the more mindful riding. I'm actually more careful with shifting this bike. Okay, so there are times that finding neutral on this bike is a little bit challenging, so I have to rev a little bit, enable for me to find neutral. But 90% of the time, you will easily find neutral. So in my overall experience with the bike, I rather enjoyed riding this. It's fuel efficient. It has a great sounding engine. The 270-degree crank is just well built with this long bullet exhaust that is just resonating. I mean, pun intended, but the sound is just phenomenal on this bike. And with its low RPM run, I think it's perfect. I can't say much about maintenance, but given that it doesn't have a lot of technology included in it, much is mechanical, this is a very low maintenance bike, which is true to Royal Enfield's vision that you can purchase a bike and then you can maintain it at low cost as possible. And you can reallocate those expenses into making this bike your own. The overall experience is just awesome. So this ends the review for the Interceptor 650. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you reached this part, I'm very thankful. And if you want more content like this, you can subscribe to the channel and like the video as well. Again, this is Leo. As always, ride safe and see you on the roads.